June 2nd, 2023. In a quiet Florida neighborhood, one family is about to be torn apart forever. The local PD received a call that evening that some kids were trespassing on a woman's property. This is a common type of call, but this was not an ordinary situation. That woman was Susan Lorincz. She was well acquainted with the local police dispatcher. She'd called the cops to her house on at least 14 occasions over the last few years.
Hi.
What's going on this evening?
Lots of children screaming their full heads off, running around. Yes, I would like to press charges.
Okay.
Because she doesn't need to.
I'm getting too much feedback on the phone from the dog.
The dog. You can't stop the dog from barking.
Yeah, but too much feedback. Can you please have me
That's
This man next door has been harassing me for the past 3 months.
What can I help you today?
Okay. Yeah, I've had mail taken. I'm peaceful and quiet. I'm like the perfect neighbor.
The kids all live on that side of the street. For some reason, they love to play over here. I'm like, guys.
Probably because it's open.
I understand that. I have migraines.
Clearly, the local kids were causing major problems for her. Or was she causing problems for them?
I'm not over there harassing her, doing anything. They're playing. Literally, every time the police are over here because of this lady.
And they're playing over. And she called us an N-word.
I called because the lady across the street on the phone hit me with the sign.
She has a sign and she's basically like ramming the sign in my face. So then when she went to pick it back up, I picked the sign up and I threw the sign.
Tensions between neighbors were reaching a breaking point. But this was a private matter, not a criminal one. There was only so much the police could do. It was up to Susan and her neighbor Ajike, the kid's single mother, to resolve it. Little did they know that this neighborhood feud would take a darker turn when Ajike tried to do right by her kids and confront Susan, leaving a family in pieces and a formerly quiet street in chaos. With exclusive crime scene photos and interview footage from the Marion County Sheriff's Office, join us on The Decoder as we unpack the notorious, tragic story of Susan Lorincz and Ajike Owens. On June 2nd, at approximately 9:05 p.m., first responders arrived on a quiet residential street in Ocala, Florida. The scene was one of chaos. There was a dead body lying on the grass in front of 58-year-old Susan Lorinc's apartment. The body was that of Ajike Owens, known as Ajike, a 35-year-old mother of 4. She'd been shot in the chest. When they saw the cops, the neighbors began shouting from their houses that the shooter was still inside the apartment. The police approached with caution, not knowing what they were walking into. On the street, they were sitting ducks for a potential shooter. But soon enough, Susan came out.
Show me your hands! Turn around! Turn around! Where's your gun at?
It's in my bedroom.
I don't know what's going on. You're going to be detained for now.
Is there anybody else in the house?
Susan Lorincz had shot her neighbor, Ajike. She'd been the one to call 911.
Oh my God, this lady just tried to break down my door. I shot through the door.
They arrested Susan on the spot. She came quietly and made no effort to deny that she'd been the one to shoot Ajike, who was now lying dead on her front lawn. Worse, Ajike's 4 children were all in the vicinity. They'd seen their mother get shot, and now they could see her dead body on the ground. So how had this happened? How had the relationship between 2 neighbors degraded to such a violent extent? And what did Susan Lorincz have to say for herself? The police took her in for an interview.
Basically, the neighbors were out there screaming, yelling. The kids were like back and forth. I had a miserable headache. Went inside, laid down. They finally got quiet. I came outside, and the 3 boys were there. I'm like, guys, you're trespassing. Come on, out of here. And he's like, I want this, and I want that, and fuck you, and fuck this. I'm like, oh, okay, little big kids, because they're all really young.
Susan set the scene. She was in her house, hoping for a quiet night. But her neighbors, Ajike's kids, were playing outside, being loud. Susan was tired and just wanted to go to bed. So she confronted the neighbors.
I wanted to check my truck. Every time I had my truck on one side, the kids would throw the balls and hit the truck.
Okay.
So I moved the truck to the other side. Then they move themselves to the other side, and they keep just
antagonizing you.
God, horribly.
She said the kids were within the privacy fence in her yard. She just wanted them to leave her alone.
And I'm like, guys, come on, leave. Because I wanted to check the truck and everything. And then they were like, I'm going to tell my mom. I'm like, go tell your mom. I don't care, And
have you had problems with him before?
Oh, my God, yes. And they've been harassing me last week.
Susan had lived in that house in Ocala for 3 years. For the last 2, she said, AJ's kids have been causing problems for her.
Ever since she
Is it just those same 3, or do you have problems with anyone? Does anyone else give you problems?
Every time they see me, they get together and scream and yell.
AJ had moved in across the street 2 years earlier in 2021. She was a single mother to her 4 children, boys aged 12, 9, and 3, and a girl aged 7. Her older boys were sporty kids who liked to play in the street and surrounding front lawns, while her daughter was into cheerleading at school. They were active, excitable children who needed room to roam around. Susan, however, felt like they were invading her space, and she felt threatened by this invasion.
So they were being obnoxious out there tonight, and they
no.
finally got quiet, but then you go outside and the 3 of them are out there.
Yeah, and I didn't want to go any further because he's like, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. I'm like, in the world.
Who said that?
Ajike's kids.
This wasn't just kids being annoying. No, according to Susan, she had reason to be scared for her life.
I think her name is.
Okay.
She actually had thrown a sign at me before. She picked up the no trespassing sign and just threw it at me. She's like, here, take your sign. I'm like, it's not mine, it's Charles. He doesn't want you guys here.
Charles Gabbard was her neighbor, and indeed the landlord for the whole building. Susan blamed him for her protectiveness over the property. According to her, she was just enforcing his rules, and AJ was attacking the wrong person. Charles, however, later said that the grassy square was designed to be a communal space, and that he'd only put the sign there to try to ease the tensions between AJ's kids and Susan. So Susan was hardly a neutral party. She was annoyed, tired, and apparently frightened by the kids' behavior. That evening, she tried again to get them to leave her alone, and finally, they agreed.
I'm like, kids, go home. So they go home, and then all of a sudden she comes out, and she is just banging on my door. I'm like, go away. I'm not dealing with you tonight. And then she started banging so hard, everything started shaking. And I'm like, you really need to leave.
AJ, as a single mother, was bound to be protective over her kids. She wanted to confront Susan, and she wanted to do it then and there.
And she, I'm going to kill you. And she's just banging away. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. Ever since she has actually harmed me, I'm like, it just keeps getting worse and worse. I'm like, I don't know what to do with her. And she banged so hard, it looked like my door was going to fly off. And I panicked. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's really going to kill me this time, And so I don't even actually remember picking up the gun. I just remember shooting.
Susan believed that AJ wanted to do more than just confront her. AJ had already thrown a sign at her, so she said, and now it was dark outside and AJ was hammering on her door. So Susan picked up her gun.
Where do you keep the gun usually?
It's in my bedroom. I really feared for my life. I mean, honest to God, I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, I'm a nervous wreck. I'm not supposed to be getting nervous or anything like this because I have an aneurysm on my left kidney artery.
Not only did she think AJ was coming to attack her, but she was also worried about her health. Too much stress, according to Susan, could kill her. So it was a dangerous position she was in, she said, as AJ was trying to get into her house.
Well, was she saying anything?
You don't talk to my sons. I'm going to kill you.
Did she try the door handle, or was she just beating on it to try to push it in, or what?
She was just, just trying to push it in, trying to push it in, and I was like, oh my God.
Susan was adamant that AJ had threatened to kill her. But there had been a lot of 911 calls that night, and Susan herself had a Ring doorbell camera that could have recorded audio of the altercation.
But is there any reason why, if we reviewed that evidence, she wasn't saying, I'm going to kill you?
That's what I heard.
In response to what she thought she heard, Susan shot AJ.
I just panicked. It just, clicked. I hit her. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Maybe she had been defending herself. but there was nothing to defend herself against anymore. She'd shot AJ dead with a gun she'd bought apparently because of a previous altercation with her neighbor. But AJ couldn't tell her side of the story.
Is it feasible to say that this is just got to a boiling point for you, that you couldn't take it anymore? And because again, if this stuff happened in the past, I get it, but we're talking about a specific event tonight where she didn't make it a point that she was trying to come in. She was trying to get your attention to say, apparently, to stop throwing things at her kids.
This was a part of the story that Susan hadn't been so keen to tell. Bystanders reported that that same evening, they'd seen Susan picking up one of the kids' tablets off the ground and throw a roller skate at the kids.
They keep leaving all their toys around. The other day I almost killed myself going out. I had an early morning doctor's appointment and I didn't see the roller skate and I almost killed myself. I'm like, guys, stop already. This is not your garbage yard. And the kid's got his roller skates there. And I'm like, really, take your roller skates. And I threw the roller skates. I'm like, go fetch them. Just enough. Because...
Did you throw it at them?
Oh, God, no.
Okay.
Susan said she'd just thrown the roller skate away, across the grass, not at the kids. But this wasn't the only report of violence from that evening.
No, I just...
And what is the thing about the umbrella?
I thought it was raining before, and I walked out and it wasn't raining. I'm like, okay. So...
Okay. And you swung it at them or so, or one of them?
I wasn't even close. I was still inside the vestibule. So...
How can we explain that then with people saying, like multiple people that weren't talking to each other, that if they were saying that's what they saw?
I don't know. Maybe I did step out and I'm like, guys, go away, but I would never touch them.
If the witnesses were to be believed, Susan had thrown roller skates at the children and tried to hit them with an umbrella. If Susan was to be believed, on the other hand, then those witnesses were all wrong or liars, and she'd only shouted at the kids to go away. So what was the truth? Susan presented herself as a good Christian, and in Christian doctrine, the teaching to love thy neighbor is paramount. But Susan, it turns out, wasn't a good neighbor at all. There was a record of disputes between Susan and AJ's kids across the last year or so. Susan had called 911 on multiple occasions, and police officers had responded to her home. Her complaints varied, from AJ opening her mailbox to letting her dog loose on Susan's property. The latter incident, in February 2022, was the time that Susan said AJ had thrown a sign at her. Susan called 911, and the police came to talk to them both.
He says no trespassing, and they're always walking the dog's always taking the crap. There's poop on the sidewalk, there's all kinds of stuff. I said, can you please keep the dog over there?
AJ told a different story. She made it clear that she thought Susan had a victim complex.
Yes, she's already on the phone and I'm being attacked. Someone's attacking me.
Susan said she'd been hit on the shin. However, there were no marks on her leg. AJ denied hitting her at all. She'd thrown the sign, but away from Susan. The police did not arrest her. This was one of 14 call-outs to her address over those 2 years. All the time, she was worried about who was on her property and trying to get the police to do something about AJ's kids.
I don't want to be intimidated by them screaming and yelling at me, telling me I'm a calling me Karen. They're calling me names.
In one incident, the police were talking to her when one of her neighbors came into her yard.
He's trespassing.
He came over to come ask us a question.
The police took him to a different area to talk.
I was trying to reason with her one day because we were all playing here. Young kids, everything jumped. So, all right, let's go. And she's like, hey, you know what? One day you guys are going to die.
This was a complete turnaround. Susan had claimed that it had been AJ and the kids who were threatening her, not the other way around. And she didn't want this neighbor telling the police what she'd said. She interrupted the conversation.
I'm getting too much feedback on the phone from the dog. Can you at least go someplace where he's not barking?
It's a dog. You can't stop the dog from barking.
Yeah, but too much feedback. Can you please at least go someplace where I'm not getting so much feedback?
Yeah, that's, tell me,
All right, well, you have a good one. Apparently, we can't stay here.
Susan was not a good neighbor. She was fiercely protective over her space, to the extent that she was claiming rights she didn't actually have. According to the landlord, the grassy yard was communal, open to everyone, but she didn't agree.
Over there harassing her, doing anything they're playing. Literally, every time the police are over here because of this.
In one body camera video, officers talked to AJ's kids, who said Susan had called them slurs.
And she called us an N-word.
Was there a deeper motive behind her antagonistic treatment of AJ's kids? Had they just been minding their own business this whole time, subject to her harassment for no reason? Ajike Owens was born on January 13, 1988, in Broward County, Florida. She and her extended family lived there until she was in high school, when they moved to Ocala. She graduated in 2006 and went to college, first the College of Central Florida, and then the Hillsborough State College. She then worked in the service industry, working her way up to head guest department manager at a local McDonald's. Her first son, Isaac, was born in 2011, with her other kids following over the next 9 years. Not much is known about their father. It doesn't need to be. AJ was an excellent mother on her own. She was known to be very involved in their lives, always attending their sports games or her daughter's cheerleading events. Is it any wonder that she felt protective over them and wanted to defend them from their domineering and even racist neighbor? After her first interview, Susan was released, pending investigation. This was because of her claim of self-defense under the Stand Your Ground law in Florida. This allows someone to use deadly force in self-defense without the duty to retreat if they legitimately believe they are under threat. This was what Susan was counting on to protect herself from prosecution. But the police continued to investigate. They executed a search warrant on her property and found that there was no damage to the exterior of her front door that would suggest AJ had been trying to break in. The only damage, in fact, was the singular bullet hole. They also talked to AJ's kids. The kids confirmed that Susan had taken their tablet, thrown roller skates at them, and swung an umbrella in their direction. She'd also apparently recorded them while giving them the middle finger. The police found several photos and videos of the kids on her phone, corroborating this story. Once, one of the kids said she told them, "This isn't the Underground Railroad," accompanied by a racial slur. Meanwhile, none of them had heard their mom threaten to kill Susan while knocking on the door. The police took this contradictory evidence to Susan in a second interview.
You never said anything about this not being an Underground Railroad?
An Underground Railroad comment or something like that was mentioned?
No.
We did so many interviews.
Jesus Christ, no.
There was a statement like that made.
All right, that's new to me. I mean, it's completely new to me.
She denied some of what the witnesses had said, and she evaded the rest.
Was there other times when you got frustrated or something with these kids and you've said something else that we're not talking about? I mean, have you said other words to them or something about middle fingers or something? Tell me about that.
It wasn't at the kids, it was at the gentleman. He's a guy, he gets all the kids together, so they're screaming and yelling and they're doing all this crazy stuff, and I'm like, stop already. And I asked him, I said, please stop.
She didn't exactly deny how she treated the kids. She just said she hadn't directed her treatment at them. Then she blamed it on a language barrier.
What's with the racial statements that everyone's saying that you made? I mean, have you ever used the N-word and they're using it against you? Have you said it in passing or something?
I have no idea. But it could have been I was speaking Hungarian and instead of English.
So you're native Hungarian?
My father was Hungarian, my mother was Polish.
Susan was born in 1965 in New Jersey to a Polish mother and a Hungarian father. Her childhood hadn't been easy, and she offered it as an excuse.
I said, one of my friends was murdered when I was very young, and she screamed. She was bound and gagged, and the guy thought he killed her, and she screamed. And so every time those little kids scream, I keep thinking of my friend Elizabeth.
She said that when she was 14 in 1979, her friend Elizabeth was kidnapped and murdered. The circumstances sounded extremely traumatic.
So that guy came and he beat her and he thought he killed her. and he bound her up, and he buried her there in a shallow grave. And she wasn't dead. So when the coroner said that there was all dirt in her lungs because she kept screaming and screaming and screaming, so...
This was a horrific crime. Susan was no doubt traumatized by her proximity to it. But the tragedies of her past didn't end there.
Have you ever been a victim of any violence?
Oh, yeah.
She told the police that she had been assaulted by her father from the age of 4 to 20 while she lived with him in New Jersey. She also said she experienced violence as an adult, too.
I was dating a gentleman, a doctor, up in Michigan. And we were going to, move forward with the relationship and everything, and he got super drunk one night, and he started beating me.
She didn't go to the police for either of these awful crimes. And in cases like this, that isn't uncommon. It's even understandable.
I never said anything. I was so embarrassed.
But it wasn't an excuse for what she'd done to AJ. That night, Susan had made 2 911 calls. The first was to report the kids trespassing. The second was to report that she'd shot AJ through the door.
From the time that you called 911, these kids are on my property again, they're yelling, what happened that first 911 call? That time that you hung up with 911, how long before she showed up and she was pounding on the door after you hung up?
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to be clear, 2 to 5 minutes from the first time she pounded to the time where you felt in danger enough to pull the trigger.
This added up to at least 12 minutes elapsing between Susan hanging up with 911 and killing AJ, according to Susan. But there was a very easy way to fact-check this statement. All the police had to do was look at the call logs from the 911 dispatcher. They found that she'd called 911 the first time at 8:54 p.m. That call had lasted 5 minutes, and she'd hung up at 8:59 p.m. If Susan was telling the truth, her call about shooting AJ couldn't have come in until at least 9:11 p.m.
So the second 911 call where you called, lady was banging on my door, I shot her through the door. That call came into our call center, it was received at 9:01, which is 2 minutes after you hung up with the communication center the first time.
2 minutes for AJ to arrive at Susan's door, start hammering on it, and threaten to kill her. 2 minutes for Susan to decide that her life was in danger and fire her gun. This was a dramatically shorter timeline than she'd been claiming to the cops. It suggested less that she'd acted out of a reasonable fear for her life, and more that she'd acted on the impulse of rage. That she tried to change the timeline also suggested that she was aware of what would work for her defense and what wouldn't. Early in the interview, she'd said that AJ's behavior wasn't reasonable or prudent.
It's not reasonable and prudent. I mean, you just don't, bang and expect someone to come out. Yeah, I think I'll come outside so you...
These were very specific words, and later the police pulled her up on them.
And where did that come from, that terminology? Is that
watching TV?
Watching TV? Have you done any research on the laws as far as in Florida, as far as self-defense and things like that?
I looked at it today.
Prior to today, had you ever done any kind of research like that?
No, absolutely. I know what you're thinking. Did I look up the laws so I could do something? No, absolutely.
This is not a situation where you set something up because you were tired of this person, you were tired of the situation that they put you in.
No.
Susan denied that she'd done research into the laws to see how she could get away with killing AJ, but she'd slipped up by using such specific terminology and by lying about something easily verifiable, the timeline of the killing. Was she trying to get away with murder?
You're trying to tell us that a reasonable person would shoot somebody for less than 2 minutes of making statements outside. That doesn't make any sense.
She also hadn't displayed much remorse or emotion at all throughout the interview.
I can't take it back. It's transpired. It's in the past. I don't know what to do. It's just probably me shutting down again.
Whether it was a trauma response or not, it didn't help her case. The police terminated the interview and arrested her for manslaughter, and at first she didn't cooperate.
We're gonna have you go with this deputy here.
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
No what?
I can't. I'm not going to. Sorry. No.
Stand up.
No, don't touch me. I don't care. Kill me.
After 5 minutes of argument, the police convinced Susan to stand up and come with them to be booked on the charge. They took her away, leaving the notepad where she'd written an apology to AJ's kids behind.
I am so sorry for your loss. I never meant to kill your mother. I was terrified your mom was going to kill me. I shot out of fear.
Attorneys for the Ocala mother who was killed by her neighbors say they feel let down because justice is not being served.
AJ's family wanted more than a manslaughter charge. They wanted Susan to go on trial for murder. As they saw it, Susan had mounted a campaign of harassment that had culminated in a cold-blooded, planned murder. For the police, however, there wasn't enough evidence. Susan would go to trial on the lesser charge of manslaughter. She continued to maintain the self-defense angle throughout the legal proceedings. She didn't take the stand, but her attorneys called a doctor to testify that she had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. There was no question that Susan had shot AJ. The question was whether the stand your ground self-defense law was applicable here. In August 2024, after a week-long trial, the jury, which consisted only of white jurors, found her guilty of manslaughter with a firearm. At her sentencing hearing, she made a statement to AJ's family. She talked about her extensive medical history and maintained that AJ and her kids had been the aggressors.
And I have some heart issues and high blood pressure. And there's a reason why I'm telling you all this. The first time I encountered Miss Owens was February of 2022. I was about 7 weeks after the neck fusion, and she basically attacked me. So was I terrified? Absolutely. And just as far as the kids saying I said racial slurs to them, it never happened. I just never said them. I never had a problem with a black person in my life. I never intended to kill her.
Susan wouldn't let go of the story she'd told the police. She insisted she'd been scared for her life, and she didn't address the discrepancies in her timeline, the fact that AJ had never actually been violent towards her, or the way she'd researched self-defense laws. Still, the judge had this in mind. Though mitigated circumstances were considered, including her PTSD diagnosis and lack of criminal record, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison. This is 5 years less than the maximum for a crime like this with a gun involved. All 4 of AJ's kids were initially taken in by 2 of the kids' father. Where they're living now is unknown, but life can't be easy, growing up without the dedicated mother who'd fought for them until her dying breath. What do you think about this tragic story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, keep up with our channel, and we'll see you very soon on The Decoder.